10 spine-chilling true trucker horror stories exposed. Discover the Sinister, Haunted Roads. Dave, a seasoned long-haul trucker, knew every inch of Highway 66 like the back of his hand. Yet as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows along the asphalt, he felt an unsettling twist in the pit of his stomach. Waving goodbye to his young daughter and wife, he hopped into his rig, heart heavy but resigned. He felt tranquility washing over him, a reassurance he was a reliable provider. This stretch was nothing, just the same road he drove night after night. But as the darkness swallowed the landscape, the tantalizing whispers of ghostly hitchhikers and long-lost truckers began to creep back into his mind. Was it just urban legends meant to terrify rookies? Surely he was safe, a steady hand at the wheel, rolling on. He felt the familiar hum of the engine, filling him with a false sense of security. But as the stars blinked above, the transformation from safety to creepiness began in earnest. Shadows danced like phantoms just outside his headlights, playing tricks on his senses. At the diner, a gathering of truckers sat hushed, eyes hard and distant. Their silence was suffocating, like they were all waiting for something dreadful to break. He felt their eyes lock onto him as he stepped in, the camaraderie he expected replaced with a collective anxiety. Something was off. "Best keep moving," one of them muttered, his voice gravelly like the gravel roads they traveled on when times were tough. With a flick of the radio, Dave tried to drown out the growing sense of dread, but it seemed the storm brewing outside was intent on shaking his resolve. Just then, a torrential downpour exploded from the sky, drumming against the roof like urgent applause. He pressed on the gas, determined to outrun the storm and the creeping unease. Out of the corner of his eye, a flicker of movement caught his attention. A young woman, drenched and flailing her arms, desperately waved for help. Against his better judgment, he pulled over. As she climbed in, water dripping from her hair, something wasn't right. "I'm Claire," she said, voice trembling. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, trying to mask his growing apprehension. Her face flickered with a nervous smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You've heard the stories, right? About the truckers who vanish." His heart raced. Her hints were too sharp, cutting deeper with every word. She spoke with eerie familiarity about the dark entity roaming these roads, a being that preyed upon unsuspecting drivers, and he felt the carefully built walls of his comfort crumble. Now, the hum of the truck and the sound of rain turned into a chorus of terror, enveloping him wholly. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The rain pounded harder, and Dave's grip tightened on the wheel. Memory flashed of other truckers' warnings about unwelcome passengers and ghost stories. Claire leaned close, her breath a mix of anxiety and something unnameable. Her gaze flicked to the rearview, and Dave's heart sank as he caught sight of dark figures weaving in and out of the illumination from his headlights. Panic ignited within him. The hairs on his arms stood on end. With each turn down the narrowing road, the world outside his truck felt more sinister. Sweat dripped down his back, fingers trembling, and for a moment, he found himself wishing he had just kept driving. Claire's expression morphed, a slight smile playing on her lips as she whispered something he didn't quite catch. Dave shuddered. Was she part of the tales he dismissed? Or was something worse hiding behind those shadows? As he pressed the gas harder, driven by some primal instinct to escape, he cast one last glance her way, only to find her eyes locked on the darkened horizon, a shiver rippling through him. Who was she really? And was he already too deep in the nightmare to turn back? The headlights sliced through the torrential rain, illuminating sections of highway that appeared to stretch into eternity. Each thrumming raindrop felt like a frantic whisper, urging Dave to abandon the road, to flee from the girl and the deepening shadows. He dared not look away from the unrelenting asphalt, but curiosity pulled at him. What was Claire hiding? Are they following us? He managed to ask, forcing himself to break the suffocating silence. Claire's fingers tightened on her knees, her smile fading. They always do. You felt it, haven't you? The pull of something hungry? The terror clawed at his chest, a tightening grip that stole his breath. Just then, a flash of lightning illuminated a figure in the distance, a glimpse of a shadow moving toward him. Dave's heart hammered as he swerved instinctively, nearly losing control. The truck lurched, rattling dangerously against the slick road. Stay focused. Claire screamed, a sharp edge of panic slicing through her words. But her warning felt like ice, cold and terrifying. He could sense the shadow gaining ground, he could almost hear it whispering, promising doom. With a quick turn of the wheel, Dave jolted the truck back onto a steadier path. The shadows outside slithered back into the darkness, their intent obscured. He wished he could shake the despair creeping into his thoughts. The fun, the stories shared in health, they were stories for children. He thought he'd left them behind for good. Just keep going. Claire urged, but the way her voice trembled suggested she wasn't as certain as she wanted him to believe. Every second stretched painfully as unease spread like vines through his mind. Were they really being followed? Surely it was the storm playing tricks on him, but with each pulse of the engine and every irregular thump of the rain against the windshield, his doubts deepened. What do you want from me? Dave barked, frustration seeping out alongside his fear. Claire turned slowly to face him, her eyes wide and glistening with an intensity that sent jolts of dread through his veins. They want what every soul craves, connection. They hunger for memories, for warmth, for the living. Each word felt like a nail driven into his chest as a cold sweat broke out on his brow. How do you know this? He stammered, struggling to keep his voice steady. She leaned back, biting her lip, contemplating how much to reveal. My brother was one of them, lost to the road. I've been trying to find a way to stop them. To save anyone I can. Chilled, Dave sensed a deeper horror in her revelation. Something stirred behind his thoughts, clawing for freedom and understanding. Their road became a twisting labyrinth, every mile moved them further into the unknown. His heart raced as he remembered horror stories heard around campfires, speculations shared over diner counters, and now, he was part of that sickening tale. The truck suddenly jerked, as if caught by an unseen force, the tires skidding on the waterlogged pavement. Hold on! He yelled, wrestling with the wheel as it pulled to the left, to where the silhouettes gathered, beckoning. Shadows closed in, intertwining like fingers hungry for a grip. Just then, Claire shouted something he could barely hear over the roar of the storm. They won't stop until they have you. Dave's breath caught in his throat as he felt the truck begin to break beneath him, almost as if the shadows were halting it entirely, whispering promises of entwined souls. He fought a losing battle, his mind racing to find a way out of this nightmare, yet he could feel the depths of despair washing over him. With one last desperate glance, he decided then and there that he wouldn't go down without a fight. Get out! He yelled suddenly, and for the first time, panic flared in Claire's eyes. If I can just keep moving, maybe we can break free. But as they tore down the highway, the shadows folded around them, swallowing the night. And then, as the storm reached its fever pitch, Dave glanced at Claire once more. Her smile returned wide, unnerving. Do you really think you can outrun them? The truck started to sputter, lights dimming one by one. The road ahead faded into an abyss. And as they barreled down a path that felt increasingly sinister, one thing became painfully clear: soon, he would be faced with a choice that could change everything. Would he confront the darkness, or simply let it consume him whole? The engine coughed, sputtering fears into the roaring storm. Dave had never felt so helpless, like a puppet dangling on frayed strings. The darkness enveloped the truck, swallowing every shred of escape he envisioned. Don't you get it? Claire's voice pierced through the sound of the rain. You can't outrun something that's a part of you. The word struck deep, dragging into him a primal dread. He shot her a glance, her eyes glinted like shards of glass in the dim light. "What do you mean by that?" he whispered, dread clutching at him. "Every memory they take leaves a void. Something dark takes root inside you, a hunger." As thunder cracked like a whip, the truck jolted again. A rush of icy air blasted through the vents, swirling about them like a sinister breath. Shadows played against the windows, contorting and writhing. "Claire!" he yelled, but the name felt insignificant against the roar outside. "What did your brother become?" Her face was a mask of anguish and determination. "He was taken and then he returned." "Returned? What does that even mean?" The rain was relentless, hammering the truck with the force of 1,000 fears. "It means he was no longer human. A vessel, nothing more." The truck shuddered again, every bump in the road now amplified by the storm's fury. The treacherous landscape blurred into a montage of shadows and despair. Dave felt his heart race, his grip tightened on the wheel, knuckles white against the unforgiving darkness outside. The figures danced in the periphery, always just out of reach, their whispers slithering through cracks in his sanity. Suddenly, the truck lurched to a complete stop, the engine dying with a gasp. The headlights flickered and dimmed, casting their last thin beam into the void. Panic clawed at him. Dave twisted the key in vain, pleading with the machine to revive. But the quiet that settled felt like a shroud, wrapping around them, heavy and suffocating. Claire's voice trembled, drawing his gaze back to her. "We have to go. Now." "Where?" "There's nothing but darkness." "They don't need light. They'll find us anyway." Her words hung in the air, a grim invitation that twisted his stomach. With the door peeling open like an unwilling mouth, he felt claws of chill brush against his skin. The shadows inched closer, their forms whispered secrets only the lost could comprehend. "Follow me," Claire insisted, her voice an urgent hush. She flung open her door and jumped into the night. The rain swallowed her in an instant, and panic surged. "Claire!" he shouted, half despairing, half incredulous. But he felt it then, a pulse, a beckoning presence just beyond the shadows. Grabbing the door handle, Dave flung himself into the torrent, rain plastering his shirt against his skin. It was like stepping into ice water, but the difficult choice pulled him into motion. Was this the end, or did a way exist? Claire beckoned through the storm, her silhouette swallowed by the shadowy expanse. "Trust me," she called, and for a moment, he felt an urge to trust her. Her intensity, her pain reflected in his own terror, but as he stumbled after her, the world around him shifted. The ground felt alive, trembling beneath his feet. Cries echoed from the dark, haunting sounds that shielded secrets. The shadows expanded, corrupting the very air he breathed. Dave's breath quickened. "What is this place?" "The crossroads," Claire whispered, her voice almost lost in the tempest. "Where souls are trapped or freed." But was he ready to confront the choices that lay before him? Each step drew him deeper into the abyss, where the shadows derided his very existence. The shadows began to breathe, each inhalation full of promises laced with despair. And in that darkness, Dave realized there was nowhere left to run. The night felt endless, predatory eyes watching, waiting. As Claire became but a faint outline against the storm, a whisper danced through the rain, beckoning him. "Join us, find peace." Dave felt the pull sinking into his core. Was he fighting a force much stronger than himself? In that very moment, everything unraveled, and the choice crystallized. Ahead lay a path he never wanted to take. But as the shadows loomed closer, he understood something crucial. Sometimes, darkness isn't just pursued, it's embraced. And as the last flicker of hope dimmed, he could only wonder what awaited him in that ultimate choice. The storm howled, a monstrous creature clawing at the edges of reality. Dave stumbled forward into the blinding downpour, Claire's figure barely visible in the relentless darkness. Each step felt heavy, like walking through molasses. The air crackled, thickened with malice and the distant echoes of forgotten cries. "Claire!" He shouted, but his voice drowned in the storm, falling into the hungry shadows surrounding him. Keep moving. She turned briefly, her eyes wide, pleading, and fierce, but the darkness seemed to reach for her, pulling. The moment hung suspended, fraught with tension, before she vanished into the swirling black that a visceral panic gripped him. He couldn't be alone here, not with whatever was lingering. Dave pressed forward, limbs trembling, the fears that had once whispered now screamed. He felt the ground shift as if it sought to swallow him whole. The whispers were closer now, curling around him like smoke, seductive and vile. Join us, find peace, they slithered into his ears, insistent, as he fought to shake off their weight. What peace? He didn't want their version of peace. Clenching his jaw, he pressed onward, tearing through the unrelenting rain. The air twisted into laughter, mocking the very essence of his struggle. Claire! Where are you? His voice cracked, desperation mixing with the thunder. Suddenly, something shattered the surface of the rain. A figure emerged, spectre-like through the veil. It was Claire, face contorted in terror. You have to listen to me. They're coming. Dave's heart stuttered. What do you mean? Who? They're not just shadows. Claire's breath came in gasps, her voice barely a whisper beneath the roar. They take shape from your fears, from your regrets, and they hunger for more. Frustration clawed at him. What do they want from us? Just tell me. He could feel the dread coiling tighter, squeezing the sanity from his thoughts. Everything. Claire shouted over the tempest. And they're hungry. Dave felt a cold sweat creep along his spine. The shadows pulsated around them, and the air grew thick with an unspeakable dread. He realized he was not just fighting for survival but battling a part of himself, his regrets, his failures projected into a horrific tableau of nightmares. The earth vibrated beneath them, thrumming with an ominous force. Other figures began to slink from the shadows, their forms indistinct yet disturbingly familiar, faces twisted in sorrow and longing. Join us, they murmured, drifting closer, weaving through the storm. No, he gasped, shaking his head violently. I want tea. A cacophony erupted as their voices crescendoed, penetrating his mind, a hellish symphony of despair. Dave's heart pounded against his ribcage, blood surged in his ears. They reached for him, fingers of smoke stretching out, whispering promises of solace in exchange for surrender. Dave, don't let them in. Claire screamed, her eyes wide with terror. They'll take everything. We have to resist. But resisting felt like trying to swim against a tide that pulled him deeper. He stumbled, disoriented, looking for something, anything that resembled salvation. But the shadows closed in, looming larger, their forms melding with the darkness, faces twisted, eyes hollow. With a sudden rush, an eerie calm enveloped him. He felt a sharp tug at the edges of his reality, pulling him toward the figures beckoning in the darkness. Could he truly fight them? Could anyone? Claire! He cried, desperate, feeling the pull of darkness wrap tight around him. You can't let them take you. You are more. She screamed, voice a thread breakable yet unwavering amidst chaos. Just then, he felt it, an echo of warmth, of a memory untainted by the shadows. A flicker of light erupted in his chest like hope. But was it enough? Was it too late to escape? As the shadows surged forward with a sinister laugh, one thought struck him: did the decision rest with him, or had he long surrendered to the darkness? In that fading moment, the pull intensified, the figures howling with discontent. Would he succumb or push against the tide, risking everything? For a flicker of truth lurking in the vast unknown? Choose. Claire's voice snapped him back to reality. And just like that, a choice hung heavy in the air, one that could plunge him into salvation or destroy him entirely. But where would either path lead? What ultimate price would he pay? As he stood poised between two worlds, he realized darkness was not just a state of being but a living entity waiting, watching, hungry for him. The shadows clawed at Dave, their forms weaving in and out like serpents, seductive and relentless. The whispers rose again, a low and sinister chorus that melded with the howl of the storm. It was no longer just wind and rain outside, it was an orchestra of despair, each note driving deeper into his mind. Dave. Claire's voice cut through the chaos, fierce as a blade, but it was a distant echo. You have to make a choice. Break free. Break free. The words hung in the air, chilling and sweet, like the promise of freedom accompanied by a noose. He felt entangled, as if the ground beneath him had morphed into a grotesque web of asphalt and shadow, pulling him into its unyielding grasp. That he could see Claire thrashing against the tide of dark figures, her face a mirror of fear and resolve. You don't understand, she cried, her voice growing faint, they're feeding on your hesitance. On your regrets. His heart raced. Was she right? Every misstep he had taken, every moment he wished he could change, floated before him like gruesome shapes screaming and clawing for acknowledgement. The nightmarish parade pressed closer, eager hands slicing through the icy air, reaching for him, promising the release of despair if he would just give in. Let go, Dave. Don't listen. Claire's shout snapped him from the fog. But part of him began to lean into the dark, held captive by the weight of his failures. That he had a choice. Deep breath. Remember the warmth of the sun. The laughter of loved ones untainted by this storm. With that memory came a fiery resolve. He would not let the shadows devour him, he wouldn't allow them to take Claire. Get away. He roared, pushing against the tide. The shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned as if offended. It was enough room for them to stumble, enough space for clarity to ignite. I won't let them take me. He felt the flicker of defiance grow into a flame, the warmth radiating out until it became a shield pushing back against the dark whispers, forcing them to shriek in fury. With renewed strength, he charged toward Claire, eyes locked onto hers. The darkness hissed, angry whispers weaving into a single word that echoed in his mind, frail. Dave. Claire stretched her hand, desperation palpable. Fight, please. It was too much. The shadows lunged, creeping fingers wrapping around his ankles, dragging him back into their cold embrace. He could feel the chill deepening, tightening. Panic clawed up his throat. This was at his moment of truth, teetering on the edge. Would he succumb to their will? No. He bellowed, a primal scream bursting forth from his chest. The ground trembled beneath them, shaking loose memories and anguish alike. With a surge of fury, he yanked himself free from their clutches, flinging backward towards Claire. Without thinking, he grabbed her hand, intertwining their fates. Together. He shouted, heart racing. The energy of hope thrummed between them, a tangible bond that seemed to shine brighter than the night itself. Yet, as the shadows twisted and screeched, absorbing their defiance, a disturbing truth dawned upon him. What if the shadows were not merely external forces but manifestations of their deepest fears, ones that were born from within? The storm cracked louder, the figures swirling in a vortex of darkness. Join us, abandon hope, they whispered, gnawing away at his heart. Strange tendrils of despair inched closer, and for a split second, doubt seeped in. Was their horrific allure too strong? Yes. A voice rang out, a voice not his but echoing through the tempest. Let the darkness consume you. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. The sinister, clamorous echo wasn't just the shadows. It was also him. In that terrifying moment, the question loomed before him as the storm both raged and quieted. The choice was more than survival. It was a surrender to despair, or a fight to live free of the shadows. Could they break through the yoke of their own fears together? What fate awaited them in the eye of the storm? Would they embrace the light, or would they be swallowed whole? Dave, stay with me. Claire's voice pierced the murky quiet. Together, they surged against the tide, each heartbeat a drum echoing their resolve. But would it be enough? The shadows recoiled, but they weren't finished. The air thickened, becoming a palpable weight on this desperate fight for survival. As Dave and Claire surged, a cacophony of whispers spiraled around them, tightening like a snake coiling for the kill. Join us, they urged, their voices slithering into Dave's mind. Embrace the darkness, no. He shouted, the word bursting from him like a deflated balloon losing air. The resolve they had built seemed to falter, swallowed by the ceaseless tide. Every shaky breath felt like a battle, the pressure building until it felt like he could burst, but just then, he saw it through the writhing mass of shadows, a shimmer of light. It flickered like a dying star, warmth spilling forth like honey. Claire. The light. Dave gasped, realization sparking in him. If they could reach it, perhaps they could escape this nightmare. It's too far. Claire's voice trembled, yet her grip on his hand tightened as if defending against the abyss's pull. We can do this. Trust me. Dave pulled her forward, locking his eyes on the glowing beacon. It drew them closer, a sweet sound slicing through the chaos, a distant bell, a child's laughter, maybe even the wind through tall grass on a summer's day. They ran, hearts pounding, the shadows hissing behind them, angry and frantic. They did not want to let go. With each step, the dark figures surged. They clawed at Dave's legs, gripping his ankles like iron shackles. You won't escape. They shrieked, their voices blending into a nightmarish shrill. Dave stumbled, nearly losing his footing, but Claire yanked him upright. Fight! She shouted defiantly, her voice echoing through the tempest. Then, without warning, the shadowy tendrils lunged, wrapping around Claire's waist. She gasped, her eyes wide with terror. Dave, help me. They're pulling me back. Hold on. He yelled, reaching for her. He could feel the despair radiate from her, so familiar, so haunting. The overwhelming urge to let go flooded his thoughts. But he remembered. He thought of their times together, the laughter, the love. Desperation surged within him. A primal scream escaped his lips as he drove every moment of happiness he could muster into his voice. I want to let them take you, Claire. We're not done yet. She looked into his eyes, a determination sparking back. Together. Always. With that, the two of them tugged against the onslaught of darkness, their hands linked tighter than ever. It was like trying to swim against a riptide, but they fought, fueled by sheer will. The light grew brighter ahead, burning in stark contrast to the shadows. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the murky dark. It was cloaked in shadows but had defined a shape with glowing eyes that shimmered with an unnatural hunger. Foolish souls, it hissed, striking out with long, thin fingers that crackled with dark energy. You cannot escape your fate. Dave's heart pounded fiercely, but instinct kicked in. We'll see about that. He roared. Surging forward, they poured every ounce of energy into their final sprint. The shadows screamed, swirling around them in a wild frenzy, disoriented by their collective strength. But the dark figure lunged again, aiming for Claire's heart, a move that felt predestined, like it had foreseen their battle. Claire! Dave shouted, his voice hitching in panic. But he was too late. That a piercing screech erupted as the darkness collided with their hopes, trying to sever their connection. But even as despair clawed at his heart, Dave felt something shift within him, a flicker of unyielding rebellion. No! He bellowed again, the word echoing through the fabric of the storm itself. Would it be enough to save Claire? Would they reach the light before they were lost forever? In that heart-stopping moment, time stood still as shadows defined their final strike. With a breath, Dave braced himself, body aching and resolve waning. Would the light save them, or would they be consumed in the chaos? As the shadows converged, a chilling laugh reverberated across the storm's roar, declaring that the end was not yet written. What would they sacrifice to undo their darkest fears? The next moment would hold either salvation or annihilation. The world slowed to a crawl, the dark figure's hand stretching towards Claire in a sickeningly deliberate motion. Dave felt time fracture. An eternity stretched before him. The light flickered, gnawing at his resolve, while the shadows screamed around them, desperate and relentless. Don't you dare! He screamed, forcing his feet to move, dragging Claire closer to him, to the aching warmth. The shadows shrieked like dying animals, their howls harmonizing in a diabolical symphony that rattled his bones. But as he lunged, he was yanked back by a vice-like grip around his ankle. One of the sinister forms had wrapped itself around his leg, and icy terror shot through him. The grips were stronger, pulling him down, lurching him backward into darkness. "Get off!" His voice cracked, raw panic rising within him. Dave fought against it, thrashing wildly until the fingers clawing at him skittered away like cockroaches in the light. But Claire didn't have the luxury of focus. "I'm scared!" she screamed, voice thin and breaking. Tears streaked her face, glistening in the wicked glow of the shadows that lurked behind them. "Trust the light!" he yelled, his heart slamming in his chest. "Keep moving!" With every ounce of strength they could muster, they began to shuffle toward the radiant beacon, the light each step more fervent, more powerful. The dark entity, the overseer of this malevolent realm, roared in rage, its voice a contagion of madness. "You will pay dearly for that defiance." The laughter that followed filled the air with cold dread, unshackling every nightmare they'd ever buried. Dave glanced backward for a heart-stopping moment, locking eyes with the entity. Those glowing orbs bore into him, unsettling and predatory. "Run!" he urged, snapping his gaze forward again. Each rotation of the light grew brighter, pulsating almost like a living thing. But as they neared it, the shadows began to warp around the brilliance, trying to snuff it out. The laugh echoed in harmony, each note promising that this was a game, and they were but pieces on a board. "Keep pulling, Claire. We're almost there." Each step felt choreographed by some unseen force, tugging, pushing, and pulling them apart, testing their will. The light shimmered teasingly close, but the distance felt like a chasm. Dave could see fear blanketing Claire's face as she fought against her instinct to succumb. His chest tightened. This wasn't just a battle against darkness, it was a battle against despair. I can't do this," she cried, gasping for breath as shadows clawed at her ankles, snaking upwards toward her waist. "Yes, you can." He felt the swell of rage mixed with hope ignite his core. "We're stronger than this." Whispers encircled him, smooth and oily, curling into his thoughts, trying to convince him that surrendering would be the easier path. The shadows screeched when their mischief was challenged, a chorus of agony rising. Just as they felt the spectral fingers start to tear through truth and connection, Dave drew on every ounce of love, every shared laugh, and every moment that anchored them. "No. Claire, remember the laughter," he chanted, his voice growing bolder, wrapping around her like a warm blanket. "Remember the beach, the sunset we won't let them take that from us." Through the haze, Claire's eyes flickered with resilience. "You're right," she breathed, a whisper blooming into defiance. They dug their heels into the ground, refusing to be consumed, but as they took another step forward towards the light, a thunderous roar erupted. The shadows twisted violently, grappling for a final grasp. It was as if the darkness itself had decided it wouldn't go without a fight. Dave felt a surge of horror as everything around them dimmed. The light faltered, pulsing erratically as if on the brink of extinguishing. "Claire!" he yelled, desperation flooding his insides. They were almost there. But perhaps they had underestimated the darkness. With a final lunge forward, arms reaching out, the weight of the shadows pressed down like 1,000 heavy blankets. The malevolent laugh echoed, a promise of doom as time buckled again. As their hands stretched out, a spine-chilling revelation hit him hard. What if the light held its own darkness? What if the light meant both salvation and entrapment? The line between freedom and ruin was paper-thin. Just a heartbeat away from desperation, and it loomed before them, the choice. Would they have to pay a cost they weren't prepared to bear? In that moment of uncertainty, a dark hand brushed against his spine, whispering welcome home. Dave's heart raced as the whisper wrapped around him like icy chains. The darkness pulsed, an echo of sinister laughter that slithered into his mind, festering with doubt. Just a heartbeat ago, they had hope, a flicker of light that promised escape. Now, the shadows grew bolder, hungry for his hesitation. "Keep moving," he shouted again, his voice shaking under the weight of despair. But the ground felt more like quicksand, each step weighted by an invisible force that threatened to pull him down. "Dave!" Claire's voice broke through the chaos, a desperate wail that gripped him. She lunged towards the light, but the shadows snatched at her heels, sinuous and slick. "Don't look back." He pulled her closer, his grip tightening around her wrist as he fought against the mass of despair surrounding them. The warmth of her skin was a lifeline, a reminder of what was at stake. But it was no use. With a surge of darkness, she slipped from his grasp. For a moment, time fractured again, and he could only watch as she was devoured by the blackness swirling around her. "Claire!" he bellowed, dread clawing up his throat. "I'm coming." Panic surged through him as he stumbled forward, reaching into the void. Shadows whipped around him, their whispers rising into a cacophony of torment. "Why fight it?" one hissed, smooth and taunting. "You could simply surrender. Let us take you. We promised to keep her safe." "Liar!" he spat back, rage igniting in him. The shadows recoiled momentarily, and in that split second, he sprinted forward. The light seemed to pulse with a life of its own, flickering and dimming as if struggling to stay alive. Each time the light waned, the laughter grew louder, more virulent, until it became a deafening roar. He forced himself through the pain, the shadows digging into his skin like knives. He could feel the chills spreading from his fingertips, threatening to encase his whole body. But all he could think of was Claire, of her laughter, her smile, the life they had built together. Nothing would snatch that away from him. "Hold on, Claire. I'm right here." As he barreled into the darkness, the air grew thick, suffocating. The laughter morphed, distorting into cries of anguish, his own echoes twisting back at him. He pushed through, tears streaming down his face. Every step forward felt like a betrayal of everything he knew, yet each desperate lunge was fueled by love. Suddenly, he broke free from the shadows, tumbling into a space illuminated by a blinding light, a painful brilliance that burned his eyes. He shielded them with his forearm, blinking away the dark remnants that clung to him. "Claire!" His voice echoed in the surreal brightness. When his vision cleared, the light was blinding yet oddly inviting. But it came with a price. A mesmerizing haze enveloped him, whispering promises of safety and peace. He took a step forward, entranced by the glow. "Is this it? Have we?" He hesitated, the earlier sweet whispers of the shadows still haunting him, weaving doubt like silk threads around his mind. Then he saw her. Claire stood at the edge of the light, illuminated yet surrounded by shadows. A flicker of panic crossed her face. "Dave, don't!" she cried out, but the words fell like bricks, heavy and meaningful. It felt like a cruel trick, this light radiant yet deceptive. The shadows danced around them, creeping closer to Claire, their dark tendrils curling around her ankles like serpents. "Come back. Stay with me." He stretched out a hand, desperation taking over. "Please, Dave. Don't step any further. It could trap you too." Yet the allure of the light was powerful, seductive. His mind screamed the warnings, every instinct begging him to retreat to the darkness, while a deeper part of him yearned for the safety of the glow. As the shadows shrieked once more, a choice loomed ominously before him. Would he choose hope or risk being ensnared forever? The darkness roared, vibrating with malevolence. "Join us, Dave. It's a perfect place in our embrace. You could have all you desire forever." His choice hung in the balance, vibrating with tension. Would they remain apart, or would his decision lead him straight into ruin? Just as he was about to step forward, something curled around his heart, a question, chilling and primal. What if light could be just as dark as the shadows? Fighting against both impulses, he gripped his head in frustration. Would he lose Claire forever? As the shadows howled again, clawing at the edges of the light, the truth trembled on the brink of revelation. The air felt electric, charged with tension as Dave stood, frozen between the silvery allure of the light and insatiable darkness creeping ever closer. The shadows whispered sweet nothings, each promise winding tighter around his mind, trying to choke the clarity from his thoughts. "Dave!" Claire's voice broke through the fog, desperate and quaking. The shadows around her pulsed, expanding and contracting like a heart, feeding on her fear. Each touch seemed to sap her strength. "You have to believe me. It's a trap. It's not real," he shouted, the panic swelling inside him. "You can't be lost in there." He strained to grasp the truth, held captive by the pull of the light. "Then come back," Claire cried, desperation pouring from her voice like water from a broken dam. Tears glistened on her cheeks, reflecting the surreal glow. But with each second, the darkness gnawed at her sanity, twisting her features into a grotesque mask of anguish. "Don't let go, Claire. I'm right here." He wanted to charge forward, to pull her from the abyss. But something sinister curled around his soul, distracting him from her plea. The light shimmered, blinding him with promises. "Be free from fear, step into the light together, you can be safe." The whispers melded into one, wrapping around his chest, squeezing, stifling. Shakily, he took a step back, trying to fight the siren call. "No. I choose you, Claire. You're my only hope." Silence filled the space, heavy and smothering. The shadows recoiled, waiting. Claire's own breath hitched. "Then show me. Show me you believe." Her words echoed, a challenge, sharp enough to cut through the haze surrounding him. With renewed fervor fueled by love, he took another step. The light flickered and crackled like static electricity. "Emerge from the shadows, Dave," Claire urged. "We can beat this. Together." Then, with a determination he didn't know he possessed, Dave dashed forward. In an instant, the shadows lunged, their tendrils grasping with icy fingers. The cold was overwhelming, gnawing at his resolve and numbing his limbs. "Claire!" he roared, forcing his body into the blinding light. There was an explosion of luminescence, a blinding burst that shook him to the core. He felt himself pressed down, smothered by the light that pulsed like a heart, thrumming with life and dread. Then the world shifted. Darkness collided with brilliance, creating an unbearable cacophony of sound and sensation. The air crackled, sending stabs through his chest. And then, it faded. Dave gasped and stumbled back into a harrowing quiet. He stood in a void, floating in nothingness. The shadows melted into echoes, and sunlight danced at the edge of his vision. "Claire!" he cried again. Panic suffocated him, clawing at his throat. Dave, help! A whisper, barely audible, danced past him on a thread of despair. Heart pounding, he strained to listen. "Where are you?" He felt a twist in his gut, a blooming fear that demanded to be felt. "I'm here," the whisper came again, distant and longing. "Stay with me. I'm coming." But darkness pressed against his mind, drawing him down. The familiar eerie laughter echoed again, mocking him, teasing him with its promise. "He can't save you, Claire. You're already ours." "No." Dave roared, fighting against the pull of despair. There was a flicker of resistance in the air, but doubt festered in his heart. Was this all a cruel trick? The shadows swirled around him, a vortex of despair. Hazy figures formed, faces morphing from familiar to grotesque. A child, a figure that looked like his mother, twisted into a grinning phantom. "Join us, Dave. You'll find peace in surrendering." "Shut up!" he screamed, but the words were weak, barely piercing the fog suffocating him. Each breath felt like drowning, and visions of Claire slipped further into the abyss. "Will you save her, or let the darkness win?" The shadows whispered as they latched onto the essence of his fear, the future he dared not envision. "Claire!" The depth of his voice held the weight of his desperation. But the light was fading, and doubt plastered itself into his chest. Just as he made the slightest step towards the faint glow of Claire's essence, the world shifted again. That primal fear clutched around his throat. What if he was lost forever, destined to wander in the dark, watching her disappear out of reach? As the darkness roared again, consuming his thoughts, the question pressed against his skull: what if the greatest horror was not being trapped in darkness, but being unable to find light again? With a deep breath, he prepared for the battle. The true test lay ahead, but would it lead him back to her, or further into ruin? Dave stood in the emptiness, the swirling whispers of shadows echoing around him like a hellish lullaby. Panic surged inside, battling against the suffocating despair that wrapped around him like a vice. He could almost feel Claire slipping further away, her essence dimming in the distance, and it ignited a frenzied resolve within him. He was not ready to let the darkness claim her or himself. Claire! He screamed into the void, desperation tearing at his heart, each syllable pounding like a drum in his chest. Then he remembered her laughter, bright and genuine, like sunshine breaking through a storm. It washed over him, fueling the embers of determination that sparkled in his soul. Would he let it all slip away? Would he abandon her to whatever sinister grip the shadows had on her? No. I choose to fight. He shouted defiantly, voice echoing back at him like a pledge. With every ounce of strength, he pulled himself away from the dizzying whirlwind of despair. He wouldn't let the shadows drown him in their promises of peace. He surged forward, propelled by love and memories, a kaleidoscope of shared moments blurring before his eyes, smiles at the diner, warm embraces after a long night on the road, the sound of her voice calling his name. Those were the lights, the guiding stars on his darkest nights. Claire, I'm coming! He yelled, a fierce light igniting in the depths of his being. As he propelled himself through the void, the shadows writhed and hissed, furious at his defiance. Foolish child! They screeched. You think you can escape the truth? You're just delaying the inevitable. No, I'm reaching for the light. He roared, charging against their grasp, fighting with everything that coursed through him. Suddenly, there she was, Claire, flickering like a candle in the storm, desperately reaching for him, shadows clawing at her but failing to hold her back. Dave! Don't give in. She pleaded, her voice strangled but resolute. Stay strong. Together. He shouted, grasping onto that final thread of hope, that all they needed was each other. He sprinted towards her, every pounding heartbeat the rhythm of unity against the darkness. With an exhilarating rush, he reached her just as the shadows unleashed a deafening howl, attempting to reclaim their prize. But they held fast, drowning out the whispers that threatened to pull them apart. Don't you dare. We are more than what you offer. He screamed defiantly, pulling Claire close. The flickering spark between them blazed brighter, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. Somehow, they began to move in tandem, joined at the heart by the warmth of their shared strength. Light enveloped them, engulfing the shadows in a brilliant blaze. They surged forward, the shadows lunging and recoiling, startled by the ferocity of their bond. With the pulse of love guiding them, they broke through the storm. The light expanded, shattering the tendrils of darkness as they raced towards the warmth ahead. Keep going. He urged, fear echoing in his voice. We can do this, Claire. She nodded, determination reflected in her eyes, shining brighter than the light that danced around them. But then, a shadowy figure lunged forward, a grotesque distortion of malevolence, extending its clawed fingers towards them. No! Dave shouted, instinct kicking in as he shielded Claire with his body. In that moment, he understood this fight wasn't just for survival. It was for identity, for recognition of the warmth of being alive, for the connection they fought too hard to sever. Everything they want to take from us we fight for. He declared, and in that instant, a blinding flash of light exploded from them, radiating warmth and hope through the storm, dispersing the shadows like paper in fire. The oppressive weight diminished, shattering the darkness into fragments. Hold on! Claire shouted, her voice steady now, as they took flight, a leap into the blinding light that lured them like a beacon. As they broke free from the shadow's grasp, the warmth wrapped around them, and they felt the familiar sensation of home tugging at their hearts. Suddenly, silence fell. The chaos and darkness dissipated, and they found themselves standing on the edge of a new awakening, the night sky painted in hues of dawn. "Are we?" Claire breathed, as she took in their surroundings. "Yes," Dave replied, relief flooding through him. "We made it." The shadows retreated, losing their form as the light washed over them, filling their hearts with a sense of peace they hadn't thought possible. As they turned to each other, words failed. There was no need. Every breath felt like a promise, a testament to their strength. "If we did that together," Claire smiled, a beautiful glimmer in her eyes, "what else can we conquer?" Dave took a step closer, knowing that together, they could navigate whatever lay ahead. The darkness had come for them, but together they stood strong, united against whatever haunted roads awaited in the future. As they walked toward the soft glow of the horizon, their hearts full, the warmth spread within them, a flicker of hope kindled into a bright inferno. They would continue to face the unknown, hand in hand. Time would tell what lurked on those roads, it always had. But no matter what demons threatened to rise again, they were no longer alone. Together, they whispered to the evening sky, hearts united against past terrors. The road ahead was theirs to navigate. Now, as you finish this spine-tingling journey, don't forget, you need to subscribe now, so you never miss our exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button for our algorithm to shine bright, flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories. It's time to share your fears with fellow truth seekers, and for goodness sake, don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this exhilarating conclusion. Your support guides this journey, and only true fans understand its importance.